Hi, Dave Brewster here, and this is really just kind of a, I guess, behind the scenes look because I've received a lot of messages and comments about my tone and, what amp are you playing through, nice sound, what's your rig or whatever. And I just wanted to reveal kind of, what's going on here because I am noticing a lot of comments and messages about this. So this is like kind of a tone and effects, lesson, but it's going to be radically different than probably any other one that you've seen because there's no smoke or mirrors here at all. The audio is basically the microphone on my GoPro camera, so that I'm not even using my interface over here, with the computer. This is just behind me because, this is part of my studio or whatever. But the amp I'm playing through is a 2004 Behringer Vampire, which I'm sure some of you are probably like, do what? Because I have received a lot of compliments along with the questions. But I've had this amp for a very long time. Now, I do have other amps. I mean, there's a Boss Katana 50 sitting right there. I can see it. Um, I have other amps around or whatever, so it's not like, this is my only amp. But I really like this amp. I mean, it was $200. I bought it to teach with, and I've used it for gigs, recording. I've used it for clinics and seminars and live appearances and stuff like that. I've used it for years and years, ever since I bought it. And I literally couldn't believe, that it still works. It still sounds great. I did break a knob off of it, which I am going to show the front and kind of explain, like the layout basically. But these are really not fancy at all. There's really nothing noteworthy other than it's just Behringer's inexpensive version of an old Cyber Twin, like back when Fender, unveiled the Cyber Twin, like back in the early 2000s. So it's kind of their version of that amp. It's a 2004 Behringer Vampire, which you can see I've added all sorts of pins and patches and buttons, but I decorated it. 12-inch speaker. It's a Jensen speaker. There's nothing fancy or extravagant about this amp. You can see right there I'm plugged directly into the amp. There's no pedal board, there's no pedals. There's a built-in tuner, which is cool, but obviously the most important thing is the sound. So I don't know why. I bought this to teach with back in 2004, and it was a great lessons amp. But then since that time, I've used it for recording, gigs, clinics, all sorts of things. And it's been a very useful and reliable amp for some reason. Now, as you can see, I like this, the tone so much that as a backup, I bought the V-Amp Pro on, Reverb. I think this was like $80. I think it was like $80 and I had to pay for like, $5 for shipping or something. As far as tone setting, I always use the same sound. And I know that sounds generic, but it's always 2B is what the setting is. And then this is basically the preset, like how it comes up whenever you select that sound, 2B. There's gain set there, volume, bass, mid, and treble. There's effects. You can see I broke the knob off the effect here. So I have to either use, you can use like an eraser on a pencil, a cigarette butt, anything that will fit in that hole where I can still turn that knob. But as you can see, this is not extravagant. I think the pin collection and button collection and patch collection probably is actually worth more than this stupid amp, but it does have a sound. It sounds great. So with that setting, with 2B, this is what it sounds like. It's got this kind of 80s rock sound. Right? Very huge and large sounding. And one thing I really like is if you turn the gain all the way off, it has this more kind of bluesy rock sound. Really nice tone. And then if you start rolling that gain up, it starts to break up a little bit differently and gets a little more rock, sounding. And then the higher the gain gets, like we're almost like probably like 11 o'clock now. Now if we go up to 12 o'clock, we're gonna definitely hear a little bit more distortion and overdrive. Really, really good sounds, and I'm not really doing anything but just adjusting the gain. And you may also notice that I do use the pickup selector a lot. I'm also changing the volume control setting on my guitar, and that's one thing I wanted to talk about here, aside from just kind of showcasing this amp, which is really not anything fancy or exceptional. It's not, well, I mean, it's rare simply because it didn't really sell and do very well. And then they kind of got rid of it. This is something I don't really see a lot of people talking about. But before you start plugging in pedals and, overly saturating your sound with like loads of distortion or, radical, shifts in tone and effect settings, this is kind of a forgotten art as far as, manipulating your pickup selector, your volume control. I don't really adjust and play with the tone settings, even though like if you were wanting to go for more of a jazzier, kind of traditional jazz sound, you would want to manipulate the tone controls, but I don't really do that often. But you can mimic a wah pedal, with your tone controls if you know what you're doing. If you have multiple pickups on your guitar, unless you're just using like a single pickup guitar, which is fine. But if you have some options, a Les Paul or a Strat or a Tele or whatever guitar you're playing, Paul Reed Smith or something, change your pickup selection. Like really listen to what it sounds like, with the same tone, on your amp. Like don't change the settings on your amp. Change the settings on your guitar, and just see what happens. Great sound, really. Unfortunately, what I'm really exposing or talking about here is the fact that I'm gonna basically say the exact same thing that I heard when I was younger and just kind of learning how to play and learning about tone and amps and pedals and effects. And everybody told me, tone's in your hands. It doesn't matter what amp or guitar you use. And I knew that there was some secret or there was something that they weren't sharing or telling me or showing me. And I was convinced that they were wrong, and I kept seeing, these different people. But really, now that I'm a little more experienced and I'm older or whatever, and I've educated myself and experimented with so many different rigs and amps. I mean, I used to have a Marshall half stack, and I've had Fender amps, and good gosh, tons of amps in my days. Crate, I had an ADA, I had a rack rig for a long time, Roland GPU 100, preamp processor. I had a whole bunch of stuff that just kind of, come and gone or broken down, or I, liquidated, for whatever various reasons. But over the years, my amp impulses and needs have radically changed, because I used to be very set and I needed, a certain amp. I needed my pedal board. I needed this. I had to have that. And then just over the years and having to be more flexible and doing, impromptu performances or impromptu clinics and lessons or just jams or whatever, and plugging into whatever was around, became more common than me having my favorite equipment or my rig with me or whatever. Sometimes things just happen and you're plugging into a Black Star combo, or you're plugging into a Fender or whatever, happens to be there. Some old beat up PV, from the 70s or whatever you have to use. But I became more flexible, I guess, and it didn't really matter as much as it used to when I was younger. And I kind of liked feeling that way, where it was like, oh wow, okay, I can kind of get close to what I need with almost any amp, as long as I have my main guitar. And sometimes obviously you don't even have your guitar with you, and that becomes even harder then, because then it's like you don't have anything that you're comfortable with. So although I do prefer to have my instruments, the amp dominating me over the years, it's diminished a lot. I really, I feel like I can pretty much plug into anything and feel comfortable. I may not have my favorite tone, but I can make it work, especially just last minute, or, like if my rig, does break down, or I have a faulty, something goes wrong with my pedal board or whatever, I'm able to kind of save the day, just getting by with whatever's in front of me or around. So yeah, unfortunately, tone really is in your hands, and it's how you handle the guitar, how you pick, how you mute, how you dampen things, fret things, and then obviously how you dial things in. But as you can see in this video, I wasn't really like struggling to do anything. I was just kind of like rolling a couple knobs on this amp, which is really not that impressive, at the end of the day. This really isn't anything to get excited about. But it works, and it works for me. And it's very flexible. It's actually very, very useful, and it has a great sound, so it's a win-win as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, it's an old beat up $200 amp that I stuck a bunch of pins and buttons on, but I like it, and I guess when I think of great guitar tone, some of these rigs pop in my mind, and I think of Van Halen's, Frankenstein rig, where he had, an old modified Marshall. Look, his amps, were about to catch on fire and blow up, in some of those old photographs and live footage and stuff. It's like his rig was falling apart, but it sounded amazing. And look at other people, Dimebag Darrell. Dimebag had an old Randall and an old beat up, Dean and pedals or whatever, just broken stuff, but his tone was amazing. That Furman parametric EQ, and he dialed in, scooped the mids, and changed the world of, metal guitar tone, for real. There's lots of examples of that, Even look at Hendrix. I mean, Hendrix was pushing his equipment beyond its capability. All right, well, hopefully I didn't burst anybody's bubble. I got a lot of messages and comments about tone and what was I using and what amp was that. So there you go. That's the black and white picture. There's no Kemper, there's no fancy rig. It's just me kind of using what's convenient and just happens to be sitting right here. So that's what I'm plugged into. If you would like to learn more about tone and effects, I do have a published book with Hal Leonard, Introduction to Guitar Tone and Effects, and that's a very basic, explanation of different effects, pedals, sounds, EQ on an amplifier, and just different types of pickups, different materials that guitars are made out of, and just different variables of guitar tone, and also amplified sound and effects too. So if you're interested in learning more about this type of thing, you can definitely check out my book. And leave some comments and feedback, and subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back with some more content, material, and lessons very soon. Thank you.